All right, let's dive into kayak safety today. It's all about having more fun out on the water.
You got it. Because who wants to worry about things going wrong when you're out in nature?
Right. Today we're checking out a YouTube video.
Yeah, it's from Motor City Paddle Club Kayak Rentals, and it's called Motor City Paddle Club Kayak Rentals Kayak Safety Online Course.
Quite a mouthful, but it's packed with safety tips.
For sure, it'll get you feeling confident for your next kayaking adventure.
Whether you're a beginner.
Or a seasoned paddler.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is Motor City Paddle Club isn't just about rentals.
It's true, they're building a whole community of safe kayakers.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, I used to think safety was all about rules.
Oh, yeah.
But this video really changed my view.
How so?
Well, it showed me that understanding the risks can actually make kayaking more enjoyable.
Makes sense. When you're not constantly worried, you can relax and really enjoy the experience.
Yeah. I bet if I knew then what I know now, I would have enjoyed that choppy leg paddle way more.
Uh-huh. We've all been there. Knowledge is power, right?
Totally. And speaking of feeling empowered, let's talk gear.
Okay, let's do it.
What are those essentials we need to know about?
Well, the video highlights some key items that go beyond just ticking boxes.
So it's about understanding why each piece is so important.
Exactly.
All right, first up, the PFD.
Ah, the personal flotation device?
I admit I used to think they were kind of a drag,
Yeah.
but Motor City Paddle Club explained it in a way that made total sense.
So how did they change your perspective?
They emphasized that a PFD isn't just a legal requirement, it's a potential lifesaver. And they stressed that it has to fit properly.
That's huge. A loose PFD won't do you any good in the water.
Yeah, makes you realize we should probably check our own PFDs to make sure they still fit right.
Absolutely. Good reminder.
Okay, what's next on the gear list?
Something small but mighty, a safety whistle.
Oh, yeah. Remember that part in the video where they tried to shout over the wind?
Yeah, and then the whistle just cut right through.
It was amazing. It really showed how important it is in an emergency.
When you might not be able to shout.
Right.
They even recommended attaching it to your PFD, so it's always there.
Great tip. Okay, whistle, check. What else?
This one I'm definitely guilty of forgetting sometimes. My first aid kit.
Oh, yeah. I usually only think about that for longer trips.
I do too, but they made a good point about having it for the unexpected.
Right, like for blisters or bee stings.
Even just a headache. It's about peace of mind, really.
Yeah, you're right. A little kit can make a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. And the video even gives you a checklist of what to pack.
Perfect. All right, first aid kit, check. What about clothing?
They talk about choosing clothes that are appropriate for the weather, but also quick drying and sun protective.
Makes sense. You don't want to get too hot or cold out there.
Or sunburned.
True.
Yeah.
I learned that the hard way once.
Oh, no. What happened?
I didn't dress warmly enough and ended up freezing on the way back.
Yikes.
It wasn't fun, and it could have been dangerous.
Definitely. Layering is key.
Good point. Okay, what else do they recommend for clothing?
Oh, they really stressed sun protection hats. Sunglasses and sunscreen are your friends.
Okay, I need to revamp my kayaking wardrobe for sure. But before we even think about clothes, we have to talk about the weather.
So true. Motor City Paddle Club is all about being proactive with the weather.
It's not just about hoping for sunshine.
Definitely not. Remember that time we ignored the forecast and got caught in a downpour?
Oh, man. Yeah, that was not fun.
They really emphasize checking the forecast regularly.
Makes sense, especially because weather can change so fast on the water.
For sure. Okay, so we checked the forecast, but what about recognizing dangerous conditions?
Yeah. What are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, they talked about strong winds.
Right, those can make paddling so difficult.
Especially for beginners.
Totally. What else? Approaching storms.
Okay, so dark clouds, sudden temperature drops.
Things like that.
It's all about paying attention.
Absolutely.
Any other weather wisdom they shared?
They mentioned something called wind shear.
It's a sudden change in wind speed or direction, which can be dangerous.
Wow, I've never heard of that before.
They also talked about fetch.
Fetch. Like the game.
Not quite. It's the distance the wind blows over open water, which can affect wave size.
Okay, I'm learning so much. It's amazing how much there is to know about weather on the water.
Right. Kayaking is more than just paddling. It's about being aware of your surroundings.
Well said. Okay, we've talked about gear, we've covered weather. What's next on the Motor City Paddle Club safety checklist?
Something that often gets overlooked. Pre-trip prep.
Pre-trip prep? What do you mean?
It's all about planning and preparation before you even hit the water.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about it.
They start by emphasizing the importance of planning your rate carefully.
So it's more than just knowing where you're going.
Right. It's about anticipating potential hazards or challenges along the way.
Like what?
Well, things like areas with strong currents,
Oh,
places where you might lose cell phone reception,
makes sense.
even spots with lots of boat traffic.
That's a good point. I never really thought about those things before.
They encourage doing your research beforehand.
Yeah, and maybe having a backup plan in case things don't go as planned.
Exactly. Okay, what else should we do before launching?
I'm all ears.
Something super important. Letting someone know where you're going and when you'll be back.
Oh, I'm so bad at that. I always think it's no big deal.
I know, I used to be the same way.
But now I see how important it is, just in case something happens.
Right, it's your safety net.
Okay, I'll try to be better about that from now on. What else is on the pre-trip checklist?
Last but not least, checking your equipment.
So we're not just throwing the kayak in the car and hoping for the best?
Nope. They actually have a whole checklist in the video.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, they show you how to inspect your PFD, paddle, and kayak.
That's great. I'll admit, I haven't always been diligent about that.
It's easy to forget, but it's so important.
All right, so we've got our gear, we've checked the weather, we've planned our route, and informed someone of our plans. Anything else?
Well, even with all that preparation, we still need to talk about paddling techniques.
Oh, right. I was wondering when we'd get to that.
They emphasize that mastering those basic techniques is crucial for safety.
Okay, I'm ready to learn. What should we be focusing on?
First up, proper paddling technique.
Wait, there's a wrong way to paddle.
There is. They break down the different paddle strokes.
Oh, wow. So it's more than just sticking the paddle in the water and fumbling.
Exactly. They showed a technique called the power stroke.
I remember that. It looked intense.
It is, but it helps you cover more distance with less effort.
And it gives you better control.
Right. They even suggest practicing on land first.
That's a great idea. Okay, what else did they cover in terms of techniques?
Something that's super important. Staying balanced.
Ugh, that's my biggest challenge.
It takes practice. They suggest starting in calm water to get a feel for the kayak.
Yeah, that makes sense. I need to work on that for sure.
They also have some exercises you can do to improve your balance.
Oh, man, check those out. Okay, what else should we be practicing?
Knowing how to maneuver around obstacles.
Like logs and other boats?
Exactly. They teach you how to turn, stop, and back up.
I never really thought about backing up in a kayak.
It's handy to know.
All right, so paddling techniques, check. Now let's talk about the thing that scares me the most. Capsizing.
Oh, the dreaded C word.
I know, right? Did they talk about that in the video?
They did, and their approach was really reassuring.
Okay, I need some reassurance. What do they say?
They emphasize that capsizing is actually pretty common,
Really?
and that knowing what to do can turn it into a manageable situation.
Okay, I'm listening. What are their top tips?
First and foremost, stay calm.
Easy for you to say.
I know, it's hard when you're suddenly in the water, but panicking makes things worse.
Okay, stay calm. What else?
They demonstrated different self-rescue techniques.
Like the T-rescue.
Right, but they also showed other methods like the cowboy scramble.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It looked tricky.
It is. Practice is key.
What about helping others who have capsized?
They covered that too. They showed how to help someone back into their kayak and how to tow a kayak if needed.
That's awesome. It's all about supporting each other out there.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about gear, weather, trip planning, paddling techniques, and even capsizing. What's next?
I feel like we've covered so much already.
We have, but there's more. They also touched on some important considerations for group paddling.
Oh, right. Because kayaking with a group is a whole different ballgame.
It is. They
Yeah.
talked about the importance of staying together.
Makes sense. Safety in numbers,
Right. They also suggested establishing clear communication signals.
like hand gestures.
Yeah, that way you can communicate even if you're far apart.
Good idea.
Uh.
Any other group paddling tips?
They're big fans of the buddy system.
Ah, so you always have someone looking out for you.
Exactly.
Okay, group paddling, check. What else do they talk about?
Something that's often overlooked, but so important. Respecting wildlife.
Oh, absolutely.
They emphasize the privilege of seeing animals in their natural habitat.
It's truly amazing. I've seen dolphins and even a bald eagle while kayaking.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. But we also have to be mindful of their space.
Right, they stress the importance of observing from a distance.
So we don't disturb them.
Exactly. They even gave tips on how to identify potentially dangerous animals.
Like what?
Well, it depends on where you're paddling, but they talked about things like alligators and sharks.
Oh, I definitely want to know how to avoid those.
Me too. They also talked about adopting a leave no trace ethic.
What does that mean?
It means minimizing our impact on the environment.
So not leaving trash behind, being mindful of the noise we make.
Things like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about respecting the places we're privileged to paddle in.
Exactly. Okay, we've talked about gear, paddling techniques, wildlife etiquette, but what happens when things go wrong?
Right, emergencies. Did the Motor City Paddle Club cover that?
They did, and they emphasize that being prepared can make all the difference.
Okay, so it's not about picturing worst-case scenarios.
Nope, it's about having a plan and knowing what to do.
So what does that look like, practically speaking?
It starts with knowing how to assess a situation and take appropriate action.
Like if you capsize, do you know how to self-rescue?
Exactly. Or if you see someone else in trouble, do you know how to help?
Okay, so it's about being prepared to react.
Right. They also talked about having multiple options for calling for help.
Like a VHF radio.
If you have one, yes. And cell phones, if you have reception.
And what about those flares they mentioned?
Those are a good option too, especially in a serious emergency.
Wow, I never thought about bringing flares on a kayaking trip.
They can be a lifesaver, especially at night.
Okay, I'm adding flares to my mental shopping list. Anything else in their emergency toolkit?
They mentioned whistles, mirrors, and brightly colored cloth.
So it's all about having multiple ways to signal for help.
Exactly.
Great. We've covered safety gear, emergency prep.
Yeah.
Anything else we should be aware of?
One last thing. The Motor City Paddle Club reminded us about understanding the rules of the water.
Oh, right. So it's not just about our personal safety. It's about being responsible on the waterways.
Exactly. They highlighted the importance of knowing local laws.
Like permits and speed limits.
Yes. And restricted areas.
Makes sense. Anything else?
They also talked about safety regulations.
Like wearing life jackets and avoiding sensitive wildlife areas.
Exactly. It's all about protecting both paddlers and the environment.
I love that. So it's about more than just following rules. It's about understanding why those rules are in place.
Right. It's about being a responsible member of the kayaking community.
Well said. And that brings us to the last point the Motor City Paddle Club made, the importance of continuous learning.
They encourage viewing kayaking safety as a journey, not a destination.
I like that. So it's not just about checking things off a list.
It's about always seeking to learn and improve our skills.
What a great message. They also mentioned some resources we can use for continuous learning, like safety courses.
Those are a great option, especially for beginners.
What about online resources?
There's tons of information available online.
And they also mentioned local kayaking clubs.
Those are a fantastic way to connect with other paddlers and learn from experienced folks.
I love that. So it's all about finding a community and supporting each other.
Exactly. It makes the kayaking experience so much richer.
Wow, we've paddled through a lot of information today.
We have, and it's all thanks to the Motor City Paddle Club and their amazing safety course.
They really knocked it out of the park. Their passion for kayaking and safety is contagious.
I agree. They've given us so much to think about.
And hopefully, they've inspired our listeners to approach kayaking with more confidence and awareness.
Because ultimately, safety is about empowering ourselves to have fun out there on the water.
Well said.
It's not just about looking like a pro, it's about being able to handle different situations and avoid hazards.
Okay, I'm all in. Break down those essential techniques.
Well, they start with proper paddling technique.
Wait, there's a wrong way to paddle. I just thought you stick the paddle in and pull.
Aha! I wish it were that simple. The Motor City Paddle Club breaks down different paddle strokes.
Oh, right. They showed something called the power stroke.
Yes. And they explain how to use your whole body for more power.
It'd look way more intense than just casual paddling.
It is. It helps you cover more distance with less effort.
And gives you better control, especially in wind.
Exactly. They even show you how to practice it on land.
Like a dry run for your paddling muscles.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Right. What other skills did they cover?
Ooh. Let's talk about balance. Staying upright.
Ah, yes. Balance. Fundamental to safe kayaking.
It's definitely something I struggle with. I always feel like I'm going to tip over.
A lot of people feel that way. It takes practice.
Did they give any tips for improving balance?
They did. They recommend starting in calm water.
To get a feel for the kayak.
Right. And they demonstrated some exercises you can do.
On and off the water?
Exactly. So you can build those muscles.
Yeah, balance check. What else?
They talked about maneuvering around obstacles.
Oh, yeah, that's important. Like dodging logs and other boats.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
show you how to turn, stop, and even back up.
Backing up. You know, I've thought about that.
It can be handy. They also talk about reading the water,
Reading the water. What do you mean?
like anticipating currents, eddies, submerged rocks.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
It's all about being aware of your surroundings.
Okay, enough happy paddling talk. Let's face the fear. Capsizing.
The dreaded C word.
Exactly. It's what keeps most new kayakers up at night.
Well, the good news is Motor City Paddle Club had some really reassuring advice.
Okay, I'm ready. What did they say?
First of all, capsizing is more common than you think.
Really?
And if you know what to do, it's not a disaster.
Okay, so what do you do?
Top tips.
The most important thing, stay calm.
Easier said than done when you're suddenly underwater.
I know, but panicking will only make things worse.
You're right. Breathe, stay calm. What else?
They showed a bunch of self-rescue techniques.
Like the classic T-rescue. Yep. But also things like the cowboy scramble.
Where you basically climb back on from the side.
Exactly. And they showed how to use a paddle float.
That inflatable thing that helps you right the kayak?
Right. The key takeaway is to practice these techniques.
In a controlled environment.
Yes. Before you need them in a real situation.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about helping others who capsize?
Oh, they covered that too. How to assist someone back into their boat.
And tow them if needed?
Exactly. It's about teamwork and safety.
I love that. Okay, so we've got gear, weather, trip planning, paddling techniques, capsizing. Did we miss anything?
Well, the Motor City Paddle Club also had some great advice for group paddling.
Oh, right. Group paddling is a whole other thing.
It is. They emphasize staying together as a group.
Makes sense, especially in open water.
They also recommended establishing communication signals.
Like ham signals.
Right. That way you can communicate even if you can't hear each other.
Smart. What other group paddling tips did they have?
They're big advocates for the buddy system. Ah, so you always have someone watching your back. Exactly. It adds a layer of accountability and support.
Great advice. Okay, so group paddling is covered. What else?
They shifted gears a bit and talked about respecting wildlife.
Oh, yes. Such an important topic.
They emphasize the privilege of seeing animals in their natural environment.
It's truly special. I've been lucky enough to see some amazing creatures while kayaking.
Me too. It's one of the best parts of being on the water.
But we have to remember to respect their space.
Absolutely. They stressed observing from a distance.
So we don't disturb them.
Right. And they even gave tips on identifying potentially dangerous animals.
Like what?
Well, it depends on where you're paddling.
But-
Things like alligators and sharks.
Oh, I definitely want to know how to avoid those.
Me too. They also talked about a leave no trace ethic.
Right, minimizing our impact on the environment.
Exactly. It's about protecting these beautiful places we get to paddle in.
Okay, we've talked gear paddling techniques, wildlife etiquette, but what about when things go wrong?
Ugh, emergencies. Did Motor City Paddle Club have anything to say about that?
They did, and they really emphasize being prepared.
It's not about being paranoid. It's about having a plan.
So what does that look like, practically speaking?
Knowing how to assess a situation and take action.
So if I capsize, I know how to self-rescue.
Exactly. If you see someone struggling, you know how to help.
It's about being able to react effectively.
Right. They also talked about having multiple ways to call for help.
Like a VHF radio?
Yes, if you have one. And cell phones, if there's reception.
What about those flares they mentioned?
Those can be lifesavers.
Yeah.
Especially at night.
I never thought about bringing flares on a kayaking trip.
They're super visible. They signal that you need immediate help.
Okay, flares are officially on my list.
Yeah.
What other emergency gear do they recommend?
Things like whistles, mirrors, brightly colored cloth.
So it's all about having multiple ways to signal for help.
Exactly. Redundancy is key.
Okay, so safety gear, emergency prep, anything else?
One last thing. Motor City Paddle Club reminded us about understanding the rules of the water.
Right. Local laws, regulations, that kind of thing.
They emphasize the importance of familiarizing yourself with them.
Like permits, speed limits, restricted areas?
Yes. And they also talked about safety regulations.
Like wearing life jackets and avoiding sensitive areas.
Exactly. It's about protecting both people and the environment.
It's not just about following the rules. It's about understanding the why.
Exactly. It's about being a responsible member of the kayaking community.
Well said. And speaking of community, that brings us to the last point. Motor City Paddle Club made continuous learning.
They encourage viewing kayaking safety as a journey, not a destination.
I love that. It's not about checking boxes. It's about always striving to improve.
Right. They highlighted some resources like safety courses.
Those sound great, especially for beginners.
They also mentioned online resources.
There's a ton of info out there.
And of course, local kayaking clubs.
Ah, yes. Connecting with other paddlers.
Sharing knowledge, having fun together.
Kayaking is more than just a sport. It's a community.
Couldn't agree more.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. Thanks to the Motor City Paddle Club.
They've given us so much to think about.
and hopefully inspired our listeners to be safer and more confident kayakers.
Because at the end of the day, it's all about enjoying the experience.
Well said. You know what really impressed me? They explained the why behind all the safety tips.
Right. It wasn't just a list of rules.
Like with the PFDs,
Yeah.
they didn't just say, wear one.
Yeah.
They actually showed what happens if you don't.
Right. Like how a properly fitted PFD can save your life even if you're unconscious.
Made me realize how important it is to have the right gear and make sure it fits correctly.
Exactly. It's not just about following rules blindly. It's about understanding why they matter.
And they really focused on the mental side of kayaking safety.
Oh, yeah. Like staying calm in emergencies.
Being aware of your surroundings.
Thinking ahead.
It's like they were saying, your brain is your most important safety equipment.
That's a good one.
Right, because being a safe kayaker isn't just about physical skills.
It's also about mental preparedness.
Being able to make good decisions under pressure.
Exactly. And that comes from practice preparation and respect for nature.
Well said. Well, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into kayak safety.
It's time to get out on the water.
Exactly. But before we go, I want to thank the Motor City Paddle Club for creating such an amazing resource.
They really did a fantastic job.
Their passion for kayaking and safety is truly inspiring.
I agree. They've given us so much to think about.
And to our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to approach kayaking with more confidence and awareness.
Remember, safety is about empowering yourselves to enjoy the experience.
Not about being afraid of what could go wrong.
So get out there, explore those beautiful waterways, and make some unforgettable memories.
But before you do take a moment to think about this, what's one thing you can do differently on your next paddling trip to make it even safer and more enjoyable?
Maybe it's packing that first aid kit or practicing your self-rescue.
Or maybe it's finally joining that local kayaking club you've been thinking about.
Whatever it is, remember that safety is a journey,
Not a destination.
and every step you take can make a difference.
Happy paddling, everyone.